We are not road tripping, we are commuting. And being that it's Atlanta, we're going to be here for a while. And I figured, well, please don't rear end me. Oh my God. Lord. And I figured I'd use this time to make a video. So there's this account I follow, and they were talking about, dealing with burnout and struggling with sleeping, and it made me think about how, like, the thing with sleeping and just how, like, have you ever talked about, like, you go on a trip or something and how exhausting it is driving? Like, you're just sitting there and you're not actually doing any intense physical labor, but it's still exhausting to sit and drive for hours and hours. There's this very specific tension in your body, and you get different aches. Like, on really long drives, my left shoulder hurts really bad, and I have to constantly try and change positions as much as possible. And it wears you out. A long drive wears you out, even though you're just sitting there. And I feel like the same thing applies to the internet. You're not doing any intense physical activity, but the constant, just the endless scrolling, and there's, again, this very specific tension in your body as you're hunched over your phone, and it wears you out. And I don't think people realize, because we have people that either are young and when they were born, the internet already existed and it's just such a part of their lives, they don't know anything different. And then you have other people who lived in a time before there was the internet, but then they were present, as it came into existence, and they came up with it. And it's just become such a normal part of their lives. And they don't think to consider how much damage it's doing and affecting negatively so many different things, whether it's physical or mental, or it's affecting people's sleep. It's just so bad. I could go on and on and on about how much I don't like the internet and why, but I'm not going to do that. So I have been trying really hard to go back to the habit I had of reading before bed. And it's been really interesting because I have so many books, ones that I've reread multiple times and plenty that I've never read before. And it used to be no problem to pick up a brand new book and just dive right in. And it's been so long since I've done that. It's almost like I lost the muscle memory for it. And it kind of freaked me out. I was like, oh my God, did I lose my ability for did the internet do that much damage to my attention span that I can't start a new book anymore? And so at night before I go to bed, I put my phone away. Like, the way my system is, as soon as I set my alarm for the next morning to wake up, the kitchen is closed. I don't touch the phone anymore. I put it on silent. and don't touch it. And I read. And what I've been reading, it's like, you know how like when if you're like a really athletic person and you have like an injury or whatever, and you have to start doing, you know, physical therapy to get back up to the physicality you were at before. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm doing like reading PT and trying to get back up to where I was before, where I could just start a big, thick, brand new book that I've never read before, because I can dive right into a big book that I've read multiple times, but something that I've never read before, it's hard. And it wasn't like that before. So I've been doing reading PT, and it's been a lot of fun. And so I wanted to talk about that. I've been revisiting, you know, starting off small, you know, getting, you know, working out with, you know, my little dumbbells, so to speak. I've been revisiting books from when I was a kid, and it's just been really great. And I brought some here with me because, I mean, I'm barely moving. And so one of my favorites that I go back to a lot is this guy here from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. Is it Weiler? Wheeler? I used to say Wheeler, and I've taken enough German to now where, like, I want to say Weiler. I don't know. I guess I'll have to find the movie online. Yeah, this was adapted into a film. Gosh. I want to say 1980. Like, when I imagine how the screen looked, like the film quality, it looks late 70s, early 80s. And this book, when were you published? 1967, so that seems about right. From the Mixed Up Files, it's funny. I was talking about Kayla E's new book, her debut graphic novel, Precious Rubbish. And there's this part that talks about different things kids can do who, you know, are suffering from loneliness and just all the things. And reading was one of the things. And another suggestion was running away. And it's so funny, like, how that was such a thing, you know? I mean, running away from home, it was such a, like, you could almost say it was a trope, like a story trope, and something that would happen in movies a lot. Like, there was this movie that I loved, oh god, what was it called? The Little Fugitive. And it's about, please let me in, please, oh thank you. These two brothers, they're playing, and like they're playing like cops and robbers or something like that, and the little brother gets like shot, you know, pretend, but the older brother, and these are like children, like the little brother is like 5 and the older brother is like 8, and the older brother thinks that he actually killed his brother, and he's just horrified and terrified, and he runs away from home and spends the day hiding at Coney Island. And I remember there was a time, you know, I considered running away from home. And there's this book that I love, William Goldman, the writer of The Princess Bride. His first book, The Temple of Gold, there's this part where the two friends, they run away from home. And running away from home, it could be you're running away from home because something bad's going down and you're trying to escape, or you're running away from home because you're a bored kid. And it's just interesting to think that is just not a thing anymore. There's this book that I had, oh my god, I had so many there's this writer, Cynthia Voigt, and she wrote a lot of like YA books, and one, like, she had this whole series called the Tillerman series, the Tillerman cycle, I think, if I remember correctly. And the Tillermans were this family, and gosh, there are quite a few books in this series. I want to say there's like 6 or 7, and they're all awesome. And I used to have them all, but the Great Shipping Disaster, those were some of the victims, and I keep meaning to go online and get them again and reread them because they're awesome. And God, if I could, I wish so much that I could make kids read this book. I'm just so curious how their mind would perceive it and what they would think of it, because I remember when I read the book, I found it fascinating and just so daring and scary, but I was curious about it, like, can't help but daydream, like think about, what would I do in this situation? And I feel like kids today would read this book and it would just be incomprehensible to them, like they couldn't even fathom, like it would almost read like a fantasy story to them instead of a slice of life type thing. So this first book, it's called Homecoming, and the opening scene is the mother telling her car full of children, stay here in the car, I'll be back. And she never comes back. And so we have the oldest daughter, Dicey, and then the next oldest is James, and then Sammy and Maybelle, I think, who's like 4, and Dicey, the oldest, is like 12. So we've got this 12-year-old girl. She has 3 siblings. Mom abandoned them in the parking lot in a mall in a town that she's unfamiliar with, because what happened was she lost her job, lost their home. Dad disappeared a long time ago. And so she packs all the kids up in the car and she's like, we're going to drive to Grandma's house. And this is the first time the children ever even heard of a grandmother. They were like, grandmother? Okay, this will be interesting. And then Mom disappears. And so now they have to figure out how to get to Grandma's house. And it sounds quaint the way I say it, but it's actually not. It's an intense read. And it's so good. And like I said, there's like 7 books in the series. A couple of the books go back in time. One is called The Runner, and it's about the mother, her brother. And other books, they grow up with the kids and you see them become adults, and and there's this other book that's like focused on different characters that the kids meet, and it's just a really great series. Cynthia Voigt is a awesome YA writer, and it's just reminded me of that, like last night when I was reading from Kayla's book about running away from home, and how running away used to be such a thing, and it could be an adventure or it could be an escape. And for this book, from the Mixed Up Files, it's a little bit of both. It's an adventure, but also an escape, but it's not a terrible escape. So it's 2 kids, Claudia and Jamie, and Claudia is running away from home because she's just tired of all the injustice. And by injustice, she's the one who always has to like set the table and empty the waste baskets and blah blah blah, while her brothers just get away with everything. So it's not like anything terribly abusive or anything like that. She's just a kid that's just in her feelings, and decides, I'm going to run away from home. And she picks one of her brothers, Jamie, to go with her because she counts on him to, be able to keep his mouth shut and keep a secret and not tell his parents or other siblings about their plans, because she's got a plan for this running away venture. She's got to save money and et cetera, her allowance. And she picks him because he has a sense of humor, and he is a bit of a pinch penny. So he has money. So she's like, yep, you'll be a good companion. You'll be the brother to come with me. And they run away to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I just loved that so much as a kid, because there was this movie that I loved. Sesame Street had this movie called Don't Eat the Pictures, or the Sesame Street gang goes to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And Don't Eat the Pictures, it's like this whole music segment where Cookie Monster is going around and he's like eating all the artwork that has, like paintings of like, anything that's food related. He wants it, even if it's not cookies. And those two things just correlated in my head when I was a kid, because what happens is, like, the museum closes and everybody gets locked inside because they go running off looking for Big Bird, who ran off to look for Snuffleupagus, and so they all end up getting trapped in the museum. And meanwhile, in this story, they run away to the Metropolitan Museum and they hide out in it. And I just always thought, God, that would be so cool. And you wonder about, can't help but daydream about, I wonder if I could do that, if I could pull it off. And it's just interesting to me, just the whole like running away thing. And I wonder if kids still think about that, if that's something that is in that world anymore. It seems like that's kind of gone, which is interesting, considering like the movie I was talking about, the Littlest Fugitive, that came out in the 50s, like, and then the books that I'm reading, they came out in the 70s and the 80s, and now here we are in 2025, and yeah, I don't think it's as much of a thing. And honestly, I think it's kind of sad. It's like, not that I want kids to feel inspired to run away because they have an abusive home or whatever, but just that sense of adventure. Because like I was saying, a lot of these runaway stories, it wasn't running away from an abusive home. They were just running away just for the fun of it, because they were bored and just like, let's go run away and have an adventure. And now I don't think kids even, do they even ride bikes to their friend's house in another neighborhood anymore? I don't think so. It's so odd thinking, like, how I was a pretty timid kid. I wasn't the most adventurous person, at least I thought, but God, I feel like I was like a little wildcat compared to how kids are now, which is funny because I was pretty sheltered too. My parents, they were really, if you weren't at school or at swim team or at church or at the store, like, it was just very, and even compared to that, like, I just feel like kids are just so, like, their whole world is just this little screen, and it's just kind of freaky. Oh, I'm taking these shoes off. Oh, God. It's killing me. Okay. So, there's that. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. I have such a bad Charlie horse in my foot. Oh, my God. Sometimes I get off work and, like, it's not like I'm wearing, like, stiletto heels or anything. They're just little pumps, but I think it's also because I'm just dehydrated. I need to drink more water. Oh my God. It's starting to go away. So that's that. I've been enjoying that. And then another book I've been revisiting is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This book is delightful, and it's a good example of the book, and like the movie is as good as the book. I love both the book and the movie. I rewatched the movie recently and was happy to find out it's just as good as I remembered it. It's funny, like, there's this character, Colin, who is led to believe that he is so sick to the point where he's like slowly dying. And so he's just kept in bed, never allowed to go outside. All the windows are always kept closed because this is a time period where people believed that you could just, that the fresh air was not a concept. It was like, no, it's bad air. You gotta close all the windows and stay inside. So he's just like withering away. And the main character, Mary, she finds him one night because she hears him crying, and she finds out that, he's just been basically trapped inside this room in bed his whole life. And because he's so weak and unable to walk and has all these health problems, because he's been just bedridden his whole life, it just feeds into his belief that yes, he is sickly, yes, he is dying, and he's just, all these afflictions. And it's just interesting. I don't know, there's this, I can't help but compare it to how a lot of people are now with the internet. They think that, I have this problem and that problem, and I can't sleep, and my appetite's crappy, and I just feel bad all the time. It's like, well, get outside, see what it's like. Get off your phone and stop reading all this miserable, horrible news that isn't doing anything but making you paranoid and hate everybody around you and terrified to go out and do anything. And you just create like the self-fulfilling prophecy of sickness and misery. And it's just it's weird. It's interesting, but it's weird. But it's been really fun to read. It's very nature focused. There's so much, like, I love the transitioning of like the seasons and how this bitter, oh, look at that, having a little Georgia weather right now. It's sunny, but we're getting a little smattering of rain, just a little baby sprinkle. But yeah, she Mary herself, like, she's just kind of this sickly little girl, weak, not active, and very coddled and just spoiled, and just a kind of a nasty little person. And all of that changes as she starts to go outside more and interact with people more, and starts to really get into gardening, and really gets just so much joy and delight from seeing things grow and seeing this dead winter garden start coming back to life again. And it's just fascinating how, this book, it's set well over 100 years ago, if not longer. And here we are, it's 2025. We're in the future, and people are still just kind of struggling with the same things for the same reasons, and have the same tools to improve their quality of life. And it's just so odd. How are we still here dealing with these same problems and suffering, like our health and our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health? Go outside, see what it's like, talk to people, hang out with people, stop being so paranoid and hate-filled and scared and angry, and it's no good. Anyway, so moving on. Oh God, so I need to get with a friend of mine. We found out that we both have a rather extensive Babysitters Club collection, and we want to start swapping with each other. But I have been having so much fun revisiting the Babysitters Club books, and this one was really interesting to read and kind of sad. So this is Dawn Saves the Planet. Dawn is a character who's she's vegetarian, she's from Southern California, she's just all about, the environment and good health and wellness. And it was a trip reading this book and reading about, she's teaching kids about, the importance of recycling and not being wasteful, and, doing things like using cloth rags instead of paper towels. And again, and here we are, it's 2025, and we're still struggling with waste. And people, recycling was such a thing, and now you hear all the time, oh, recycling does nothing, and it actually creates more problems than it solves. It's just like, oh my God, how have we not figured it out by now? It's crazy. It's just so crazy. But yeah, it's been fun to read these books, and it was really funny in this book. So Dawn, she gets so caught up on her Save the Earth mission that she starts alienating all of her friends. And this is one of the rare instances where there's it happens a few times, but not often, where the Babysitter Club, they there's a fraction, there's a problems arise, and it's just so funny seeing these girls, because it's a very wholesome series, and they're all very supportive of each other, and they're all good friends, but once in a while they fight. And in this book they fight, and it's just so funny seeing there's this, they're just so frustrated with constantly feeling policed all the time by Dawn, because she's just so passionate about saving the earth. And she has this kind of moment where she has to, she recognizes that she's being a real pill, and that she's not convincing people, she's not winning people over, she's pushing them away. And I just, it's these little teaching moments that we have in these stories. And that's another thing that I like about these books. It's fun revisiting stories that you read as a kid and seeing what your perception is now. Like, what's your perspective now? How do you take this information now? How is it different? How is it the same, and why? And it's just fun. It's like you get to hang out with yourself again, and the young version of you gets to see how the grown-up version of you thinks and acts and feels. And it's fun. I like it a lot. Another one that I brought, so this is Claudia and the New Girl. And it's a really interesting read. I encourage especially artists to read it. Claudia, she is just naturally talented. She has a gift. And this new girl comes to school, and she finds out that she studied at some prestigious art school. So she's feeling kind of intimidated. And then this girl asks if she can see her portfolio, and Claudia's like, oh, you want to see my portfolio? Okay. And she shows it to her. And the new girl, her name's Ashley, she praises her work. And Claudia's just so oh, wow, this girl who went to this prestigious school, she thinks my work is good. And she's just so happy about that. And she wants so much for this person that she thinks is, so lofty and learned and has, all the schooling. And so she really wants Ashley to like her. And so whenever Ashley asked Claudia to come with her to brainstorm, or let's talk about different ideas for sculptures, and because there's this sculpture contest that's being held. And so Claudia starts spending more time with Ashley, and the other babysitters, they feel kind of dissed. And this is a perfect example of how going back and reading things from when you were a kid really holds up a mirror to you and shows how much you've changed as a person. I remember reading this book, and when the other babysitters started getting really butthurt about Claudia not spending time with them and spending more time with Ashley and going, out on brainstorming sessions and showing up late to babysitter club meetings, they got so angry with her and oh, I guess, you're just too good for us now. And so whenever the babysitters, they hold their club meetings in Claudia's room, because Claudia was the only person who had had her own phone line in her bedroom, which was a big deal back in the day. When you had your own phone line, that was a big deal. So it just naturally worked out that the meetings were held at her place. And so what they did one day when Claudia didn't show up for a meeting, they wrote nasty little notes and hid them all throughout her room for her to find after she got home. And I remember reading this and feeling bad for Claudia, but also thinking, yeah, you shouldn't abandon your friends, and you shouldn't, I was on the friend side. And now reading it, I was like, damn, that's so mean. Here Claudia is, she's just trying to better her art, and at one point she's talking to her friend, she's like, it's not that I think I'm better than you or that I'm trying to replace you. I love you guys are my friends, but I can't talk to you about these things because you're not interested. And that's okay. I don't expect you to force yourself to engage with me about things that you have no interest in. But Ashley is interested. And it was so weird having these feelings and realizations of how, when I was a kid, I was just so, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Pen 15, but I just wanted so much to have friends, to the point where even if the friends I had were mean, I just put up with it because it was better than being lonely. And now when I read that book, I was just like, that's all. I just couldn't believe that they treated her like that. And like, kind of, it was weird. Like, they ostracized her because they felt like that she was shunning them. And all Claudia was doing was just trying to, work on her art project for this sculpture contest. And friends should be supportive of that and not take offense or feel insecure and think, oh, I guess she's just too good for us now. And it's like, no, people can have other interests. And Claudia, like, it got to a point where she kind of had to choose, like, my art or the Babysitters Club. And she kind of split the difference. But it just made me so sad to see that they put her in that position and made her feel like she had to choose between their friendship or her art. Bad form, Babysitters Club. She shouldn't have treated Claudia like that. Yeah, it was trippy, like, rereading this book. I was like, oh my God, they were so mean to her. Why? Makes no sense. God, is Anna and Martin still alive? Huh. I wonder. I'm gonna have to look that up. Another one that, oh God, I remember reading this one. So there are two babysitters that I really identified with. It was Claudia and Marianne Spire. She is the secretary of the Babysitters Club, which I loved. Her job was to, like, she was in charge of, like, logging the minutes of the meetings, and she was in charge of, like, whenever they would get a call for a job, she kept the notebook and had everybody's schedules, this person's piano lessons, this person's, like, ballet classes, who's available on what days that can do what jobs. Mallory and Jesse couldn't take night jobs because they were still too young. And that's very much how I am. Like, there was this interior design company I worked for when I lived out in LA, and it was me who, like, booked all the flights and booked all the hotels when it was, time to go to, like, conventions and trade shows and stuff. And I love it. When I used to play on a trivia team, I was the one that, kept the scores and everything. And I called it, being the secretary. I was like, oh, I'm the trivia team secretary. But in this book, so the Babysitters Club, they had, like, their regular, like, general series, but then they had things called super specials, which were basically, like, double the thickness of the regular books. And they were specials. Like, there were ones where they got lost on an island, and another one where they took, like, a big group trip to New York and a big group trip to Los Angeles. They were the Babysitter Club super special books. And then they also had a series of have like Babysitter Club mystery books. And this one is a Babysitter's Club mystery. And this one is about, so Mary Ann, she's a very shy, reserved girl who, her mom died when she was still a baby, and her dad is just this very stiff, just overly protective, very controlling of like how she wore her hair, what kind of clothes she wore. And Mary Ann comes to find out, like she's in the attic, and she finds these pictures of herself from when she was a toddler. But in these photographs, she's with people that she doesn't recognize. And then she finds these letters, and she comes to learn that after her mother died, she was given to her grandparents. And there was just this whole fight between her father and the grandparents because he wanted her back. And because what happened was, so after her mom died, he was just so brokenhearted, he just wasn't able to take care of her. So he gave her to the grandparents. And I guess, after staying with them for a few years, they just, fell in love with her. But he got to a point where he was like, okay, I'm better now. I've pulled my shit together. I can be a dad. I want my daughter back. And they were like, well, we love her and we've had her all these years and you can't have her back. And it just was this whole thing. And it was just really fascinating finding out these things about like Mary Ann's backstory as she's learning about them, especially when years later I kind of went through a similar thing myself with my mom. I came home from school one day, and this was a point in my life where my sister and I were like, we shared shifts, I guess you could say. And so I had that day off. So I came home and my parents are home, and I was like, oh, okay, this is weird. Why is everybody home? Why aren't you guys at the store? And as I'm parking and getting out of the car, my dad comes out and he's like, you need to go talk to your mom right now. And I go inside and my mom's on the phone talking Korean and crying. And I can count on one hand how many times I've seen this woman cry. And it turned out she was on the phone with like family in Korea who called to tell her they found her daughter. And so now I'm finding out that my mom like had this whole life before she married my dad. So, as I'm sure most of you know, Korea is, I don't want to get into it. Korea is Korea. People are people. You know what? I don't have the energy to talk about that. But suffice it to say, yeah, my mom, she had this whole other life that nobody knew about. It was just like this bomb got dropped on the family. And I just was remembering all of that when I was rereading this book, and just how crazy it is. You find out, you think you know your life. You think you know what's going on. And then something totally unexpected comes along and shows you don't know shit. You don't know anything. And it's been a lot. It's been a lot. But anyway, yeah, I've been enjoying revisiting the books of my youth, and it's been a lot of fun just getting back into the swing of reading books, and I'm trying to decide like what is the book I want to read when I do feel ready to like dive into a big book that I haven't read yet. Is it going to be The Once and Future King, which I've never read, or is it going to be like the Egypt trilogy that I've had forever, but I've never read? It's supposed to be great, and I want to read it. I haven't read it though. Or Don Quixote. That's a big one. Never read. I don't know. I have so many choices. But yeah, I just wanted to share this new thing I've been doing. Been doing it for, wow, it's April, so a couple months now. I guess I should be ready. I don't know. I've just been having so much fun revisiting these guys. It's going to be a little while before I dive into a new book. Been really enjoying getting back into my OG friends. So yeah, if you're having a hard time sleeping, feeling down, I really, I'm begging you, please just like create a habit, create a schedule, create a system where, you set that alarm on your phone, and that's that. The kitchen is closed. No more picking up the phone, no more going through the phone, and pick up a book. Think of, what did you like to read when you were a kid? I'm starting to running out of Baby Strip Club books to read, and I've been eyeballing my Calvin and Hobbes collection. It's been a while since I've revisited those. There's so many fun books that we had when we were kids. I've been like going back and like going through like old picture books. Those are great because then you have the awesome art to look at. I loved, there was a time where I thought, I'm gonna write and illustrate children's books. I hate this turn so much. It's like this long stretch on the left side, so the people are just flying. And then on the other side, it's a curve, so it's just... All right, here we go. Ugh. So yeah, think about what were the books you liked when you were a kid, and give them a revisit, hang out with your old friends. I promise you, it will vastly improve your quality of sleep and your mood. And yeah, all right, that's it. Bye.